We've spoke before about, the Great American Outdoors Act and preserving our national parks, not just here in Maine, but around the country. And what else do you hope to accomplish, with this new role on the subcommittee?
Well, the first thing is one of my mottos for my life is that implementation is as important as vision. So one of the first orders of business is to follow up on how the administration is executing on the Great American Outdoors Act and the Restore Our Parks Act. Where's the money going? How are they making the decisions? What's the formula? And I think that's very important because, we'll pass a bill in Congress and then a lot of people say, well, okay, our work is done. I don't feel that way. So number one, I think we're going to be following up on the implementation of those critically important laws. The second thing I want to do on the National Park Subcommittee is some sort of think hearings. In other words, what's the future of the parks? What are some of the issues that we need to really explore and to talk to some people that have long-term perspective? For example, there are issues in many of our parks of traffic and congestion. You've heard the saying, I'm sure, we love a place to death. And how do we deal with that? Acadia has just gone through a long process to figure out how to deal with traffic up there. And I think I've been to Yosemite, same issue, lots of cars, lots of traffic. So I think we need to be talking about where do we want the parks to be in 25 years. And then we'll be talking about individual parks and how, what the issues are there. But I think there'll be plenty to keep us busy in the next year, at least in focusing on how the Restore Our Parks Act is being administered, and then what's the real future of the parks and public lands in the country. This is the thrill of a lifetime to be the chair of this subcommittee. I've been working on land conservation and outdoor issues since 1987, the Land for Maine's Future program, long before I even thought about running for governor. And this is a great opportunity, and I don't intend to let it pass me by.
And Senator, obviously, a lot of states here in this country have national parks or state parks, but and what is it? And some other states really aren't known for those types of features in the state. And what is it like working with members in the Senate to kind of help pass these bills? Is it a lot? Do you feel a lot of support from states that might not have the great national parks that Mainers do or other states do?
Tremendous support and bipartisan support. The Great American Outdoors Act and Restore Our Parks Act passed, I can't remember what the vote was. I think we got 77 votes or something like that. It's hard to get 75 votes in the US Senate for what time it is. This was very strong bipartisan support, and people like Rob Portman from Ohio, and you don't think of Ohio as being a national park state. They do have parks in Ohio. Steve Daines from Montana was my partner on the Restore Our Parks Act. Lamar Alexander from Tennessee, Republican, and it with Mark Warner of Virginia. Of course, Virginia has Jamestown and the Skyline Drive, the Blue Ridge National Parkway. So this is a generally an easy sell across the country. And the Great American Outdoors Act was the biggest conservation bill passed in 50 years in the Congress, and it was a totally bipartisan coalition that made it happen.
And Senators, just switching gears to the Strategic Forces Subcommittee. So you obviously be a little bit more busy down in Washington now. And what are you most excited in that new role? I know you've spoken a lot on cyber defense and cybersecurity, but with this new subcommittee chairman position, what are you most excited for with this role?
Well, it's got this Strategic Forces Subcommittee deals with issues particularly involving nuclear issues. Non-proliferation is a part of our jurisdiction, which is critically important. The maintenance of our nuclear deterrent to keep our country safe, and how we're going to be modernizing assets that are now 40 and 50 years old, and maintaining a credible deterrent, which has sheltered this country from nuclear attack for 70 years. We also have jurisdiction of the Space Force. And I was skeptical of the Space Force when it was passed. I wasn't a big supporter, but now it's in the law. And so, again, going back to my comments about national parks, I want to see how they're implementing the new law about the Space Force, how many people have been moved over, and what the structure is, what their challenges are. So I must say it's quite a combination to have national parks and nuclear weapons as your principal legislative responsibilities, but that's the way this one worked out. I've worked very intently on armed services matters. It's also important for people in Maine to know that I'm also a member of the Sea Power Subcommittee, and be working on naval issues, which of course are very important to Maine. So most of the work in the Senate is done in committees. That's where the bills take shape. That's where we have the hearings, and that's where I'll be focusing a great deal of my attention.
And Senator, just a quick follow-up. I know you mentioned you were a little skeptical of Space Force, but now it is in law, and now you're the chairman of that subcommittee. And what's your mindset? Trying to work with folks that supported Space Force, and now you kind of have to be the leader in the room in those conversations.
Well, I think all of us have the interest now of being sure that it works, and that it works in close coordination with the Air Force and with the other aspects of the Defense Department. And space is becoming much more important. Just GPS. I mean, we've got a lot of space infrastructure that ordinary citizens use every day. We don't really think about it. GPS is probably the best example, but it's also very important for observing what's going on the planet in terms of climate change, knowing satellite photographs telling us what's going on in Antarctica with the ice sheet. It's also important from intelligence points of view. And so there are plenty of issues that are involving space, and it's becoming more and more a part of our national infrastructure. So, I don't think it's a bad thing to start out skeptical and asking hard questions. That's my job.
And I know you've obviously been on committees with different administrations. And what is it like working with different presidents and kind of being on different committees when there is that administration transition? Does anything change, or what is that like?
Well, it does change, and this is I'm now starting my third presidency. When I came in, President Obama was starting his second term, President Trump, and now President Biden. Yeah, it does make a difference. I remember coming home after being in the Senate for a couple of years, and Mary said, "Well, what do you notice?" And I said, "It's really important who the president is." And she said, "Well, yeah, that's obvious." I said, "No, not in the obvious ways, but in subtle ways, like who's appointed to lower offices in the federal government, who's on these agencies, and what kind of decisions are they making in the Department of the Interior about public lands, for example." And so different administrations have different personalities. And thus far, we're in the midst of confirming Joe Biden's cabinet. And thus far, I was just speaking with one of my colleagues yesterday. I'm impressed by the people that they put forward. We approved Gina Raimondo, governor of Rhode Island, yesterday as Secretary of Commerce, and she's really sharp. I only had met her once before, but had a chance to have a really good one-on-one conversation. Very able person. Same thing, Janet Yellen at Treasury, General Austin, or I should say Secretary Austin at the Department of Defense. Very impressive people who are non-ideological, but who simply want to get the job done on behalf of the American people. And that's an approach that I like.